Hi there, everyone. My name is Dominic Ilardi, and to kind of start off the podcast, I just kind of want to introduce the main theme, and kind of the main theme that I've been thinking of is although war allows for men to show their heroism and their passion for their country, there's also things such as like a loss of identity and loss of identity and innocence that come with that. This loss of these things can cause horrible things to happen mentally, and it can cause men to examine how their moral code has been tested. After watching the movie The Deer Hunter, listening to the Jocko podcast, and reading many of the Nick Adams stories, I've kind of come to an understanding of what it looks like to go through these mental problems. The effects of war can be a real struggle to deal with. There's actually a group of people. It's called, it's just the name Stella. They're committed to ending America's PTSD crisis. PTSD is kind of the thing that comes from, experiencing all these mental problems with war. The main focus of this group, basically, it wants people to remember that PTSD is not just like a life sentence. It's treatable. I just think that quote's really just powerful. It's something that truly examines what PTSD is. And now I'm going to take a quick interview from one of the main characters from the movie Deer Hunter. I think he'll help you further understand the effects that war can have and the PTSD that comes from it. And he'll also talk about how his moral code was tested. Hey there, Mike. How you doing today?
I'm doing as well as I can.
That's good. If you don't mind, I'm going to ask you a few questions about war and how it's affected you.
Okay, ask away.
So my first question is going to focus on how the war has affected you physically. So how has it affected you physically?
Well, I would say that I definitely have some wounds on my body that remind me of times I would rather not remember, but that is just what happens when fighting. But with all these wounds, I was able to build up my endurance and my overall will to keep going.
I've heard a lot of the stories about the roulette game and how that harmed you.
Yes, they repeatedly hit me in the face, and I remember I was very angry in that moment. I really needed Nick to follow along with the plan, but he wouldn't. I remember yelling at him, "Put an empty chamber in that gun," because if he didn't, they would keep on harming us or worse.
Wow, that's seriously tragic. So, Mike, my second question is, how has your moral code been tested, and how was it tested during your time of fighting?
Well, my moral code consists of many aspects. I would say being the three main parts of it are an individual, having grace under pressure, and an idea of one shot.
So tell me, how have any of those aspects of your moral code been tested?
Well, I would say that my idea of one shot was definitely tested. I always say you have to think about one shot. One shot is what it's all about. A deer's got to be taken with one shot. After going back to Vietnam to find Nick, I found him in a very large mess. Nick was very broken from everything that he had seen, and this was the end for him. We were involved in another roulette game. He took the gun from me and just said two words, one shot. With one shot, he was gone. So I would say it really tested my moral code and made me question whether or not one shot mentally is the right way to think.
Wow, that's truly a heartbreaking story to hear. I'm really sorry that had to happen to you. And I guess that kind of leads into my next question. How are you coping with this? How are you dealing with all of this mentally?
I would say that the war truly broke me down. I struggled severely with PTSD, and it made me make some decisions that weren't very good. Instead of showing up on my own home welcome party, I decided to stay by myself at a nearby hotel. So I really closed myself off and didn't want to interact with people. I was only focused on one thing, and that was war and wanting to help my friends in it.
Wow, that's really crazy. So are you doing better about everything now?
Yes, although you can never forget what happened during the war, you can push it as far as possible to the back of your head. But that is the way it is. As I always say, this is this. This ain't something else. This is this. Things happen for a reason, whether they're good or bad.
Yeah, that's a really great way to think of things. I think another way helping with coping is to participate in many of the treatment programs. The United States Department of Veterans Affairs have a really great setup system. They're actively trying to help people struggling with the same things that you struggle with, like PTSD.
I think that's a really great thing they're doing.
So my final two questions kind of go together. The first question is, do you think that you were successful in keeping up with your moral code? Like, were you successful in your monomyth also?
Well, it depends on which way you think about it. I would say that if my mission was to bring next body home from war, I was successful in that. Therefore, I feel I did complete the monothon.
Monomyth.
I left my home to fight for the country. I encouraged my test of bringing Nick home, and although the war got to him, basically forced him to the end of his life, I still brought him home. I remember making my promise to him in the very beginning. You got it, man.
Wow. So my last question is, after you brought him home and you knew that you were successful in keeping the promise that you made to him and succeeding in your monomyth, how did that make you feel? How did you feel knowing that you brought him back home, but he wasn't alive to know that you did so?
Well, it really hurt me at first. It hurt me to watch it happen, and it hurt me to know I won't be able to see him again. It especially hurt me knowing what the last few thoughts in his head were. But I remember sitting at the bar, eating after his burial, and singing God Bless America. I remember singing the words, stand beside her and guide her. And those words really resonated through me because I stood beside him the whole time, and that was what was important to me.
So after you were feeling all these different things, what were some ways that you were able to push those thoughts to the back of your head, like you said? Like, how could you continue to live on your life after this?
Well, I started to focus on things in my life, like keeping my body well.
I saw as I was doing some research on PTSD and the same struggles that you have, there's a group, according to an article created by Help Guide, doing exactly what you're doing is one of the best ways to recover. They say that taking care of your body and making sure that you're connecting with people is something that's very important for recovery. And yeah, I think that's a really great way that you're coping. Anyway, Mike, I want to thank you for sharing all these hard memories and all these really honest thoughts. So yeah.
Well, thank you for having me and letting me share my story.
All right. Now that the podcast kind of is coming to an end, I kind of just want to kind of reiterate our main points and then just kind of give an overall goal, like what's going to be my goal to help the cause. So kind of, I know Mike talked a lot about how physically he was kind of abused, and it really made him think about life. And then his moral code, it was tested. One of the aspects, one shot, was tested. It was tested, and I would say mentally, I think Mike is doing as well as he can. I think it's really great how honest he was and how much he shared. And I would say his moral code and the fact that he was successful in his eyes, I think that's really important. And I think in my eyes, he was also successful. And to kind of just like sum up everything, I think for me, as a person that has the ability to do something and to be a man for others, I think I should really try to help people that struggle with many of these problems that Mike has. I have an uncle. He's very sort of distant, but I think one thing that I'm going to try to do every 2 to 3 months is kind of check in with him because he is a veteran and he struggles a lot because he doesn't have a lot of family to reach out to. So I think one of my goals is every 2 to 3 months, I'm going to check on him. I'm going to reach out and I'm going to see how he's doing. I think that's going to be my goal. Anyway, thank you for listening to the podcast and I hope you enjoyed.